All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. We are so excited to be here and talk to you about volunteerism and volunteer boards. As you all know, this month's theme is volunteer management, and this is our last day on volunteer management before we get into next month's theme. I'm so excited to have Mr. Toliver, our executive consultant, on with us today. Hey,
hello,
good
everybody.
Morning.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great.
All right. So as we wait for others to join us, please take a moment and invite your friends that you would believe should be a part of this conversation to the group. Remember, if they're not currently in the group, you have to first invite them to the group and then go ahead and tag them into this live. So please take a moment to do that. So, send some reminders out, tell them, come on over. We're talking volunteer boards. And if you're catching us on replay, drop a hashtag replay in the chat box so that we know that you were able to catch up and tune in on today's live. And while we wait for others to join, go ahead and tell us a hello in the chat box. And how your week's going, and with us wrapping up volunteer management month, if there's any accomplishments in that arena that you had this month, go ahead and share that in the chat box as well while we wait for others to join us. All right, good morning. Hey, Dolly. How are you? We'll give it some time before we get started. I know we have others joining us. I see that you mentioned a gallery view, but I'm not sure. Okay, there we go. I'll change it up. We'll see if that works. I don't think so. Okay, there we go. Hey, Sarah. There we go. Thank you, Dolly. I see what you were saying. I got it. Hi, bye. Thank you for joining us. All right, I see you all tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. While we wait as well, last week we were able to have Abigail from Steps Foundation come on and share some tips and best practices that she used within her organization for volunteer management. So that was absolutely amazing. And on Tuesday, we had our Growing Your Nonprofit to the Next Level using the PPT framework. If you have not attended one of those webinars, we have another one coming up next month. You definitely want to join it as we talk about how you can use people, processes, and technologies to grow your organization to the next level. So definitely tune in with us. If you missed this week, it was absolutely amazing. I know I shared in a group that last night, our team in the nonprofit, we went out to our local university to go and recruit interns to help our nonprofit in the marketing area. So yeah, and that all goes in that people, processes, technology. The more people, processes, and technology that you put in place, you continue to grow your organization. So thank you. All right, once again, before we begin this discussion, hi Kim, good morning. Kim, I'm just gonna shout you out really quick. So yes, I'm calling you on the spot. You're probably like, oh no, yes, I'm doing it. So Kim shared with me, she's having an upcoming event, and she was spotlighted on the radio talking about her event. And I was like, that is Hot 105. You know Hot 105, Joe, you from down south.
I definitely do.
Yes. Yep. So she shared that, and I was like, that's absolutely amazing. And that sometimes as nonprofits, we forget about that public relation aspect when we're promoting our events. We're probably going on Facebook and all these places, but we forget, reach out to our radio stations, our news station, tell them what we're doing. So Kim, shout out to you. That is absolutely amazing. Hi, Jacoby. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Tahina. Thank you for joining us. Awesome. All right. Thank you once again for joining us, everyone. Again, invite your friends to the Facebook group. Go ahead and tag them in here. If there's anyone missing that, go ahead and tag them in here so they don't miss out on this discussion. And of course, if you have questions throughout, feel free to ask those questions. And if you're catching us on replay, hashtag replay. And from here, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Hey, Lasheena, before you get started, what was the name of Kim's nonprofit?
Doing Good in the Hood.
Okay, that's what's up. Is that in
Yes.
Miami or Broward?
Well, I know, and Kim, you could go ahead and drop in the chat box, but from I know that Kim's been doing work throughout Florida.
South
I know
Florida.
she's Miami, Fort Lauderdale, I believe Atlanta too, Kim.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and doing different outreaches to the community and giving out. I know for the upcoming event, she's giving out COVID supplies, different type of supplies
Awesome.
for families. So I mean, Kim, keep it up. And Kim, if you don't mind, and I believe Kim, you started your organization, I believe it's like less than a year or 2 years or so. Miami, Kim. Okay, so she's in Miami this Sunday. And Kim,
Okay.
how long have you been doing your organization? Because she is on fire. Oh, Tahina said Atlanta, South Florida, and more cities coming soon. Awesome.
That's what's
Awesome,
up.
awesome. Yes.
Congratulations.
Yep, that is that. Keep it up. That is absolutely amazing. Good morning, Vanessa. Thank you for joining us. All right. Thank y'all for joining. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started and talk about volunteerism and then also volunteer boards. And I'm just so excited as we know today it's the last conversation on volunteer management as far as tied to our theme this month. And I'm just glad to have you here, Joe, to just talk about your experience with volunteerism, and then we could talk a little bit and dive into volunteer boards and how that plays a role in that volunteer aspect for organizations.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lasheena. This topic is close to me. It's important, I think, because really my career in nonprofit happened because I had a desire to be a volunteer. And but 30 years ago, in the 90s, I was a certified technician for BMW. But a friend of mine, Reverend Alvin Jones, I know you know him.
Yep.
Him and Travis, they talked me into volunteering with this camp. And I decided to go along. I had really not a lot of experience with volunteering, but I decided to go along. And that camp happened to be the United Way of Broward County Defiant Camp, Drug-Free Youth in Town. And man, I never looked back. And really, it came to a point where I had to decide to leave my career at BMW to go do work at a nonprofit organization. And I'll never forget, I was in a training down in Atlanta. And I had to really debate and pray, to be quite honest, about whether or not I wanted to switch careers. And I always talk about, like, you could redefine yourself, you could redo yourself as many times as you want, but this was really moving away from something I had worked towards for many, many years and became very good at, to trying something that I had never done before. And I was literally running on faith and passion. The passion for the work. I understood what the need was right off the top, because I could relate to the need, because those were things that I needed growing up that were missing in my life. So I knew how impactful programming can be, how impactful somebody say, hey, I'm willing to give and to sacrifice for you on a volunteer basis and not get paid. I'm just going to do that for you. I knew how powerful that was. I got engaged in that process. And 30 years later, here I am today, talking about volunteerism, still working in some capacity in the nonprofit arena. And I've done everything from direct service to grants management to fund development, PR and communications and marketing. So I've done just about every aspect of the nonprofit industry, and it all started with volunteerism.
Wow. And that's awesome, because a lot of times volunteers come in the door and maybe, and I don't know, when you join United Way, I don't know, it sounds like you were invited to come in. I don't know what your expectations were coming in, but sometimes that's what happened. Volunteers come in, they don't know exactly, they know their passion, they know they enjoy helping people, but not necessarily where they want to be in the space, but through volunteering, they're able to explore different roles and which prepare them for the next level. For you, it kept you in the nonprofit field. Yay.
It did. It did. It really did. You know, I met people, young people like yourself back in those days that I still connected with today. It was people like a good friend of both of us, Colbert Prosper, that I was able to kind of see myself in him. You know, that was one of the first things that I was able to recognize. And that really kind of drove my passion, because I was able to see myself in the young people that we were dealing with. And man, I'll tell you this, when I first got in, I was doing more direct service. And I really transitioned over to management roles or leadership roles, because once I started doing direct service, I realized that the people who were making the decision really didn't understand what was going on the ground as much as they could, or as impactful as they could in their decision making. And that really gave me my aspiration to move into leadership. So, I mean, all of it was capitalized from very basic tenets of, you know, me willing to be a volunteer. And that was pattern for me as a kid. My mom was a volunteer. She worked the polls every election. So that was a pattern that I saw as a kid. So it was just a natural transition, but it really had a serious impact on my career.
And a serious impact. Well, I'm grateful for you becoming a volunteer, because for those of you that don't know our story, that Defiant program that Joe talked about, that was the program I was in high school. Along
she took
with
over,
others.
she means the one she took over. It was her, it was really her program.
Yes, in high school. So that shows how you just having a passion for helping youth, you know, as a volunteer, the impact that you were able to have, even, you know, on me and from high school, and then here we are years later.
Almost 18, almost 20 years later. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a long time. Yeah.
Yep.
But you know, like I say, you know, you can't keep what you got unless you're willing to give it away. And I just think that, you know, although I helped you, but really the opportunity to serve has really helped me and allowed me to have a full life. One that I can, you know, when your eyes close for the last time on your tombstone, what do you want it to read? I think, you know, I always think about that. You know, what do I want to read? He was a millionaire. He was this, or he owned a lot of cars, or he was empathetic to people. He gave back to his community. I think I'd rather people know me as that. And that's what I've kind of worked towards. And it's just been a natural thing for me, almost like a calling. And it all started from volunteering. I still volunteer today in many ways. And I've had 9 mentees.
Wow.
In the course since probably late to mid 90s to now.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
A lot of them are adults like you now. And so, I mean, the power of volunteerism is huge. It has the capacity to make an impact on someone's life. So yeah, I definitely glad you're talking about this. And I think we're talking about it from more of a human side. I don't know. And as we talk more, we can talk about it on a more, you know, how it supports your organization, you know, how it enables your nonprofit to deliver programs, because that's what volunteerism does. It really drives it home. So.
Awesome. So I'm going to read, so Tahina in the chat box says, I feel this. I stepped away for a little while because life was lifing, as they say, but volunteerism is so rewarding and there is so much work to be done. I'm thankful for Kim for allowing me to work with DGITH and for you all helping us by sharing knowledge and resources. Thank you, Tahina. Yes. I mean, volunteerism, and honestly, a lot of us, or even executive directors or founders or leadership boards, what we're going to talk about.
Definitely.
A lot of nonprofits start with this volunteerism, and we didn't really tap on that throughout the month, but a lot of organizations start with volunteerism. So it's that important. And ends.
Okay, because take it for example, you have you're a director of a nonprofit agency. A regular work day is 8 hours. So when you do 12, you volunteering the 4, right? It's just, I mean, it starts and ends. You're gonna always.
It does.
in 30 years in this business, I found that you'll always be in that volunteerism role to some capacity. You know, sometimes it comes with a check. You know, sometimes it comes with perks, other than how it makes you feel. But you definitely will be working in a volunteerism role in some capacity, especially with nonprofits.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, so for the nonprofit organization, and I know you touched on the importance of volunteerism, and I don't know if you have anything to add there before we talk about who these volunteers are, where can you find them, especially in relation to the volunteer board?
Well, the only thing that I would say, you know, in terms of why volunteering is important is because out of as we spoke earlier, some of your main and most important volunteers are your board members. Typically in a nonprofit, board members don't get paid. Right. You know, the real incentive is the work that they're doing for you and why they're doing it. They also, volunteerism can be important around some of your fundraising campaigns. Those board members who volunteer often come with what we call a sphere of influence. And sometimes you can not only tap into that individual board member's resources, but also the resources of their sphere of influences, especially when it comes to doing special event fundraising. It's really key and imperative that those board members are on the floor being a champion for your organization. No CEO or executive director should be in isolation. They should empower those folks, those volunteers, to really carry their message. But they have to know what that message is. It is your job to really communicate your organization's message to your board members. And we're going to talk about how you could do that and why that's so important coming up a little later in the conversation. I'd like to share that because it's very vital that your board members, that you draw in what your expectation of those board members should be. And you make clear what those expectations are so you can send them out ready to go. You prepare them, you give them their talking points, and you give them a platform to be a champion of your organization. And so volunteers add a lot of value to the work that nonprofits do.
Awesome. So who are these volunteers? Where can we find some of these volunteers for our organization?
Oh, that's easy. Your cousin Boo Boo, your Uncle Tom, Uncle Leroy, Auntie Betty Boo, all of them ready to go. They're ready to sign them up. You can put them on all your paperwork and they're ready to go. No, not really. There's a couple of different ways I like to look at it, but the main way that I like to look at board development and volunteerism is your volunteers exist in what we like to call the 12 sectors for community change. That's where they really exist. When you think about the work that you want to do in your community or your schools or in your particular neighborhoods, it is these 12 sectors that we're going to talk a little bit about. I'll at least tell you what sectors they belong to, that really drive home your message, really builds the capacity for you to complete the mission and the vision that you've established for your agency. And if you look at bringing folks in for at least half of the 12 sectors, you're doing good. But the 12 sectors are, you want to have youth representation. Like, we want to do work for youth, yet we don't want them to be the voice or part of the voice that communicate what that work looks like. So I always say, hey, you got to have youth, not a youth organization, not to say you shouldn't have a youth organization, but you need a real youth on your board, a youth that's connected to the community, especially to the community that you want to do the work in. Parents, some of the hardest groups to tackle. They're very difficult to get parents to get involved. My remedy for that is, I always say, in terms of getting parents to volunteer, even the recruitment of that process is meet them where they are. Where are our parents? They're at Optimus football leagues. That's where they are. If their kid playing football, basketball, soccer, or tennis, they're there. Like, if you want to recruit volunteers, that's where you go. You meet parents where they are. Businesses. Most of our communities are surrounded by businesses, small and large. if you have your logic model together and your strategic plan together and your fund development plan together, there's no reason why you shouldn't have those businesses sitting around your table, and not just sitting around your table, helping you develop and implement the programming, but also supporting it with resources. And then there's the media. You don't ever want to be an organization that's out there being named the best kept secret. You know what I mean, Lasheena? You want to be able to tell your own story. Don't wait till something happens and somebody get to tell the story for you. You want to tell your own story. That's why media need to be present. And a person from the media can always help you understand how your story needs to be told, right? And so I believe that anything that you do, you got to have media involved. You got to have schools involved. They are the stomping ground for most of our programmatic opportunities. Those youth servicing organizations, God bless them. Toughest ones in the crowd. Youth servicing organizations have it tough. They have a huge job to do, and the funds that are out there for them to do it are a couple of things. Hard to get, and when you do get it, hard to keep. Because there's that whole thing about having enough capacity to actually spend the money and not having to give it back. And most youth serving organizations have an important job to do and know how to do it, but oftentimes don't meet the necessary organizational capacity to be successful with a grant. And so sometimes those youth services organizations get into what I like to call starvation mode. But folks like Lasheena at Nonprofit Enthusiast, you know, holler at her. She got a lot of remedies to help those with that. But law enforcement, religious, fraternal organizations, they are all people who should, those are your volunteers. There they go right there. Those are the categories that you want to look at in terms of who you want to bring to your table. And guess what? If you haven't done your logic model for your organization or the strategic plan, we can help you with that. But think about this group of people to be able to help you devise that logic model or that strategic plan. Just think about if you had been able to put together a task force or a steering committee to help you work on your program's logic model. And those folks will help you develop what strategies, what actions you need to be successful and to make a real impact with your programmatic services that you want to provide. And you brought those people to the table to help you design that program. Wouldn't those volunteers from those 12 sectors eventually become great board members? There you go. So you ain't got to, I mean, I'm not telling you to get rid of Cousin Boo Boo, but bring on people that have been a part of the planning process. Why? Because they become now a knowledgeable champion that can articulate your mission and vision because they help create it. I know I get excited about this stuff. I'm sorry.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yep.
It's just, to me, the flow, the transition of it just makes sense if you think about it. Let's go. Great board members come out of the 12 sectors, and they can even be greater if you bring them out of your planning and your strategy sessions. And I always believe that one saying is, it's not so much about having the right person on the bus, as much as it is about having the right person on the bus in the right seat. And it's our responsibility to our volunteers to ensure that we got them in the right seat. And we empower them with opportunities to be a part of the planning process, opportunities to not only just serve on that, but move forward types of planning committees and steering committees. And then there's the Mr. and then there's the Mrs. Do All group, right? It's a whole nother group of volunteers. These are the volunteers that's going to do anything that you ask them to do. They're going to be on time. They're going to be early. And if you're not there on time, they're going to look at you with the cross eye, but they will show up for the next time because they're your true champion. Sometimes they're your spouses. Sometimes they are your good friends, your neighbors. But these are the people who really got your back, who your rock, who could take care of the little small pieces of the pie, will allow you to free you up so you can handle the bigger pieces of the pie, especially for some of you newer. Those people are very important, but it is your job to keep them engaged That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give them an opportunity to feel a sense of purpose, a sense of community. You got to help them also, I believe, make connections for them and for the things that they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of folks talk about networking, but I like to use volunteer events to create opportunities for friend raising. And that's a whole nother live presentation, right, Lasheena?
That's a month. We got that planned as one of our months. So it'll be coming up. Yep.
But Lasheena, you get what I mean when I say to you,
yes.
You know, you got to engage these volunteers.
Yes.
I mean, what are some of the tactics that you guys have been in love and doing love for a long time? And it's a really volunteer base. What are some of the things that you've done?
Just like what you said, positioning volunteers in the right seat. We had a volunteer that came in and they thought they wanted to be on our program team and help with planning program. They dedicated hours to it. And then every once in a while, I like to touch bases with our volunteer. And no matter how many volunteers, because we're up to 45 volunteers, I always like to have interaction with each of the volunteers. And I never want to lose that. That's just my personal preference. I know some executive directors prefer not to. I'd rather be hands-on. It's a family, and that it's a family culture, and that's just my personal preference. So with that volunteer came in. We were at a meeting one day, and I said, "How's that going? Do you like it?" And then she opened up. She was like, "I don't think programming is for me." You know, but she was able to explore that and find that through her volunteer experience. So there's nothing wrong with that. So she was like, "I think I want to do more fundraising or grant writing." Okay. That's easy. Let's get you over to the grant writing team. So that's what we moved her over to the grant writing team. And what happens is she's able to work with different levels of grant writers. So we have the experienced grant writer mentoring her. So she's able to get that, you know, experience happening. And then she used that to get her full-time position as a grant writer. She used that experience. So a lot of times when I'm talking to, like, whether it's like a funder or something, they'll ask about our retention rates. And the reason why our retention is high, I truly believe, is because of the connection that we have with our volunteers, putting the volunteers in the right seat. We're quick to move a volunteer. Like, if this isn't working for you, you know, we'll talk to them, have that conversation, and we'll move them. You know, we'll just move them into the seat that kind of works best. And then you can see the difference in their work and how they work when that passion is behind it, because they really truly love you know, where they're sitting. And I love the fact that you talked about having these with the 12 sectors of community change, having these people involved from each of these sectors from the very beginning, or from that launching stage, because there's that extra buy-in. And you find just, because it even happens to me. I sit on some boards where I go through the planning process, then something comes up, I'm up in the community, I'm like, ooh, this board, you know, this organization right here, I can advocate on behalf of the organization because I feel equipped, because I was part of that whole planning process, you know, for a certain program. So I love that you said that, having those people involved during those sectors. So yes, that's some of the tactics that we use at Love. And then we try to create connections amongst our volunteers with one another and our different leaders as well. So and they look out for each other. Our volunteers will look out for each other. And you see that some of the relationships extend beyond the organization as well, because now they take that outside and are able to help develop each other professionally outside of, you know, the organization.
No, you know, what I think I heard you talk about most was intentionality. Like, you were very intentional about everything you did. And I think when it comes to volunteerism and nonprofit organizations, we definitely have to be intentional about our volunteers in terms of providing opportunities to give them things that are specific, right? You know, tasks and actions that are specific, and assignments that really is almost as if it is what you would do for your employee. I mean, it has to be that detailed and that specific about what you expect of them, because they want to come in, they want to do what they need to do with clarity so they can enjoy the experience, not be burdened by a failed administrative part of it, or a failed setup, whatever. You know, all those things too are onerous of the agency to provide, to make sure, one, that, you know, that those tasks are intentional and lined out. And two is that whatever you commit to, that you stick to your end of the bargain. So in other words, what I'm saying is, you don't want a volunteer to come into a situation, you guys doing a cleanup and the paint's not there. You're doing a freshen up of the school, or you know what I'm saying, or there's no tape, or you're supposed to be there at 9 and the person who's planning it doesn't get there to 9:20. Those are things that derail your volunteerism program. You know, so I always encourage folks, you know, make sure that you're treating your volunteers like they're your staff. So there's the training component. Volunteers need to be trained. They're walking into situations, oftentimes circumstances that they're not accustomed to. You're taking them to I remember we did a big volunteer opportunity at an organization called Women in Distress. And it was where women and children were kept at a private location, you know, pretty much private location. And so it was a lot of before things that needed to come into play that the volunteers needed to know before going into this location. And so those are the things that really help you strengthen your volunteer program. And it also helps those volunteers to be more ingrained into your organization. So they're not just tripping on that you're this organization, that you got a cool name and we saw you on TV or heard you on the radio. You want your volunteers to be connected to your cause, right? And the only way you can get all the noise out of the way is that you got to make sure that your volunteers have an ultimate experience every time they come around for every opportunity. And that takes planning, intentionality, and a lot of prayer. Because, you know, it's one thing to get a volunteer, it's another thing to keep.
There it is.
Yep,
that's so true. I'm gonna go to the chat box really quick.
Sure.
All right. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for tuning in. Hi, Yolanda. Thank you for tuning in. Yolanda said, love it. Great insight.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yolanda also shared, wisdom is knowing who should be in the room when you make history for your organization. And then she also shared about good word, the right seat, you know, putting them volunteers in the right seat. Love on those who love you and acknowledging them is key. Hannah, thank you for joining us. We're glad that you're here today. Thank you all. Okay, thank you all for being here. Feel free if you have any questions or if you want to add to the conversation, drop it in the chat box. So let's talk about how do you keep, and I know we kind of touched on this as far as keeping volunteers engaged. So because we just talked about that. Okay, you can recruit the volunteers, but retention is a whole nother thing. You know, we can have a long list of volunteers and they're not active, but how do we keep them engaged and retain them?
Well, retention I think retention is part of what we just shared, right?
Right.
So it's really in terms of the engagement piece is the retention, right? And consistent communication. I'm a firm believer that you have to keep your volunteers engaged through at least communication. You may not always have opportunities for them, but if you keep them abreast of what's going on with the work that you're doing, they still feel a part of. So I think that's one of the more important things that you can do. If you're giving them opportunities to feel purposeful, I think that is one of the more relevant strategies to keep them engaged. But more than anything else, helping them feel a part of your organization and the work that you're doing, I think is the most key component in realizing the strength of your volunteer and the impact your volunteers can make for the people that you're trying to serve. And they need, you know, a lot of times what I found too in situation is your volunteers, and we'll go to the board, and I'll do this real quick. We'll go to the board. What happens when you got a volunteer and they're not performing in a way that's adding value to your organization? What do you do then? Because I know there's somebody on the call who wants to ask that question. They were just a little shy. I know somebody wants to know that because we've all had a situation where we want to just kick this person off the board, right? You know, and I think we run into that. But I think that's the beauty of being able to add people onto your board. That's the beauty of having board retreats. That's the beauty of allowing your board members to be a part of the organization, the organizational development, your move forward planning that you do every year. You know, I think the more information a board member has, the more empowered they are to be your organization's champion. So
that is awesome. Okay, so we're gonna get ready to wrap up, and we'll actually get to homework. Is there any final thoughts or tips that you'd like to share before we share the homework for this week?
We got homework, Lasheena.
Yes, you know.
No, I just think that you guys who are out there now, you know, taking on this journey of, you know, being a part of this nonprofit, you know, community, you know, I applaud you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're volunteers too. You know, we're talking about you more than anything else. Like what you're giving right now in this space, and I'm almost certain that many of you are probably organizations that are 3 years or operating 3 years or less with probably under $100,000 budgets. So you're volunteering right now. So we're talking not only about the possibilities of volunteerism, but also wants to celebrate the volunteerism that's in you and that all that you're doing and the work that you're doing, especially in these times. So if I had any last words, I'd like to say thanks, guys. And, you know, we appreciate the work that you continue to do.
Yep. And Yolanda said, yes, the journey is not easy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's a constant battle.
Yep. It's so true. I just think about from when I started the organization, then the number of hours you put into, and I know others can relate, because I remember working full time, going to school full time, and then any gap that I get was dedicated to the organization, you know, just giving up the time to just be able to grow the organization. And for years I've said, because we're so passionate about what we do as nonprofit leaders, that, you know, we just give, you know. And I just remember even when it came to, I always said, I was like, well, everyone else is I'm gonna hire everyone else before I do, that's how the passion burned so much, you know, with nonprofits. So yeah, you're right. As nonprofit leaders, we all, you know, at some way, even if you are getting paid from your organization, we still serve as volunteers in some capacity, because, you know, so yes, hats off to you all.
Yeah, and remember, guys, if you're on the airplane and you run into a little turbulence and you got your daughter or your elderly parent on the plane with you, if the oxygen mask should drop down, be sure to put the mask on you first.
There it is.
Because you can't help anybody if you out of gas. So I would encourage you guys, take care of yourself. I just
that is so
was honored to celebrate 56 years. And I didn't really understand that in the beginning. I used to run around like a chicken with his head cut off, because, you know, in order to be oftentimes successful in corporate nonprofit world, it takes a lot. It's no joke. I mean, and you'll oftentimes, but at a certain point, I had to begin to take a step back and realize that, you know, I can't be everything to everyone, but the pieces that I could give, I'm going to give the best parts of me. And that means I got to get my rest. That means I got to ask for help when I need help. That means I got to learn to say no. Right, Lasheena?
That's right.
Oh, Lasheena don't know no yet. She don't know
I'm
no
practicing. Yet. I'm practicing though.
you know, so it is a challenge, you know, and it gets better. The more money you get, the more of a challenge you get. So, but you need the money. You cannot continue to do the good work without the money.
Yes.
So get the money. And, you know, that's why, you know, Lasheena and I are here with Nonprofit Enthusiasts, because we understand the passion, because we've lived it. We've lived it. We're living it. So we understand the passion, and we understand the cross section between the passion and the structure needed for success. And that's really what we're trying to do at Nonprofit Enthusiasts. You know, celebrate your passion and help you develop your structure so that you can avoid some of those things that Lasheena and I have went through in terms of making sure that we spent the right times with our family, you know, dedicating ourselves to self-care, you know. So I'm sorry for the pep talk, guys, but I want to make sure that you're encouraged and you got your oxygen mask on. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
true.
Because you're doing good work and we need you.
Yes. And Yolanda said, thank you for the amazing work. Thank you both for sharing this vital information. And I'm still learning how to charge folks for my services. Yes.
Oh Lord,
we've
been
all,
there, done
yes.
that. I understand.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Charge them. Charge them.
Yes.
Because you know, if you don't
Yes.
charge them right, what happens is that it turns out to be your worst job ever. You'll hate it.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you
Mm-hmm.
charge them.
Yep. Yep. Michelle said, my cup is full. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
All right. So you all ready for homework? Because you know we don't leave these sessions without homework. So here's your homework. So earlier, Joe, you talked about the 12 community sectors for change. The 12 community, yeah, I said that right.
12 sectors for community change.
For community change. I know I reversed these words.
Either way, you can say it either way. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, the 12 sectors for community change. So your homework is to identify which sectors are you missing within your organization. Yeah. So find where you're missing, and then from there, use that to help fill those gaps. So
yeah, how you gonna get them?
Yep.
And if maybe you haven't done your strategic plan or your logic model for your program, call Lasheena. But if you have, when you get ready to do your board retreat, this is when you address adding folks onto your board. If your bylaws permit it.
Yep. And well, I'm gonna continue with homework, but then when you said that if your organization is operating without a plan, you definitely should have a plan in place. And that will help you with the when to say no too. That and your budget will help you to know when to say no and find that balance for your organization. So
and it'll help you get some sleep at night. You'll feel a sense of complete.
There it is. Yes.
A sense of complete. You know, I don't know if y'all ever felt that sense of incomplete where you can't get any sleep and all you're thinking about is what you got to do. I got a lot of remedies for those.
You do. Yes. Yep. And it feels good when you have a plan in place and you know when you're going to execute the plan. And otherwise, you feel like you got to get everything done right then and there. So if you don't have one, definitely, have a plan in place.
Sometimes you got to plan the plan.
Yes, that's true. That is so true.
Yeah.
So the other homework you have, okay, so we're going to identify our gaps within our organization. And the next homework is going to be register for next month's free webinar on people, processes, and technology. So that's your second homework. If you didn't tune into this one, you definitely want to attend that one. I will say that's going to be the last one for a while. So if you missed it, make sure that you come to that April one. And then following that, we're going to go back to our fund development, which is going to align with our topic that we have in May. So please make sure you register for that upcoming training. Let me say, hey, Rachel, thank you for joining us. Michelle said, because Lord, these sleepless nights got to go. Yes. So yes. So yeah, thank you all. So next month, let's talk about, I just want to give you all some updates really quick, and then we're going to conclude this call. So next month's theme. So, we said, if you need to focus in on an area for your organization, follow our theme. So this month was volunteer management. If you missed any of the other months, go to the guide section within the group and you'll see some of the past months topics that you can go and catch up on what we covered there. But next month, we're going to be talking about measurement and evaluation. So just to kind of give you a heads up on what's to come next month. So we'll start that conversation next week. How are you measuring and being able to display the impact that your organization is making? This is often an area that gets missed because we're so passionate. We're going. We're not tracking. And then when you ask questions, well, how many volunteer hours performed? How many did you serve? It's like, I think I got an estimate going on. So we're going to talk a little bit more about putting some processes and systems in place to related to measurement and evaluation of your organization. All right. Any last words before we close out, Joe?
I like that logo. I want one.
Oh, did you all notice this? You may have noticed something different. Good point. We changed our logo. We are growing, y'all. If you did not hear, we're opening our office. Well, we opened our office. We're just making some finishing touches here in Avalon Park, Florida, in Orlando. And if you all are local, please come and join us. Or if you want to drive up, or if you want to fly down for an Orlando trip and then come by and visit us, April 9th is going to be our grand opening. And we're going to be having tours that day, and it's a community event going on that you don't want to miss as well. So it's going to be so much going on in the community on April 9th. So we'll be opening that. And as a part of this, we are rebranding. We got our new logo.
That's how you do
for
it,
pointing
Lasheena.
that out. You all like that?
Yeah, I like the hand.
You like that? That's our new logo. So you'll see something new. You'll see a few new things coming as we go, and the logo is one of them. And we're going to be doing some special things in the group leading up to the grand opening. For you all who can't attend in person, we're going to do some special things, and we're definitely going to do a virtual tour so you all can see where we are located. In case you do end up in Orlando and want to book some time with us, you can always come over and see us. So yes, thank you for that reminder.
Sure, no problem. And who's sponsoring today?
So actually, this month, Nonprofit Enthusiast took the lead on the
All right, that's what's up.
for this month. Yep. So we did take with the grand opening and everything coming up. We took the lead on the sponsorship for this month. But yes, we always have sponsors every month, and I'll put the shameless plug. If your organization, your nonprofit organization, you can sponsor a month. To be able for us to continue to do these lives on a weekly basis. We've heard so much stories, and it just warms my heart to hear people sharing what they learned from and implement, not only what they learned, but how they've implemented the things that we talk about on these lives. So we are always seeking sponsors. So feel free to send me a DM, or you can email me at Lasheena@nonprofitenthusiast.com. We're always seeking sponsors to sponsor our month conversations. We have some exciting, we have some guests coming up on upcoming sessions, but of course, you all know we give a lot, and it's thanks to our sponsors. Our sponsors are able to offset the cost, so we can offer this to you at no charge. So please, if you're interested in that, feel free to send me a message. But we appreciate you all. We're going to keep on doing these lives. You all keep sharing those stories. It motivates us. It excites us. And like I said, we have some additional, we have some guests coming as we get into some of the themes to talk a little bit more about some of the topics. So, all right, y'all. I think that's it. Hey, Yolanda said, congratulations. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you so much for joining us today. And come on over to Avalon if you want to come for the grand opening. April 9th will be our grand opening in Avalon Park. All right, everyone. So I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next Thursday. And remember, next month's theme is measurement and evaluation. All right, see y'all. Bye.